What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Protect Our Queens podcast presented by the Give Us a Shot Network. With me, as always, my brother in Christ, my partner in women's basketball crime, Martin Sories of Basketball Society, for the last time of 2024. My guy, how you doing?
Feeling good, feeling great. Last one of the year, baby. Last one of the year. We have some fun stuff to do tonight, some important conversations to get to and react to. It's been quite a year. These last 2 years have been quite the years for women's basketball. We got some stuff to kind of recap a little bit, some of our thoughts on Caitlin Clark from this year. That's coming up tonight. But yeah, man, last one of the year. Good to still be here. Good to still be breathing. Anyone who's watching, this is Protect Our Queens. If you don't like women's basketball, this definitely is not the place for you. We appreciate you for tuning in. Anyone who's watching live or on the playback, make sure to leave some comments down here as we get into our discussions. And just real quick, I think I might circle back on this with what we're talking about soon, Marcus, but I did want to offer a quick just point of explanation. Protect Our Queens, what it represents, because I know sometimes it gets mixed up. People on social media, people in comments, etc.
Yeah,
Protecting Our Queens is not just about our Black queens, who we do advocate for and we do love and appreciate and will speak up for at any instance, but the model of Protect Our Queens is really built on protecting our basketball queens at all levels, from the idiots, from the uneducated, from the nonsense that's happening out here. And fortunately, there's plenty of evidence to help us out and support us, because the women's game is booming right now. But just something I wanted to throw out there on our last show of the year. Just another reminder that, Protect Our Queens exists for a reason, to do the things that we do on the show, which is to help to educate and inform people about the incredible talent in women's basketball right now.
Yeah, and speaking of educating and informing people about the incredible talent in women's basketball right now, Martin Sories, wouldn't you know that two of some of the very talented players we've had on the show, Michaela Blakes and Keely McMiller, they both 6 games apiece. They have the most 20-point games by a freshman so far this season in the country. Major shout out to Michaela Blakes down at Vanderbilt. Major shout out to Keely McMiller up at Rutgers. Two of those queens that we have been protecting since we started the show. Two people that we've been fortunate enough to have come on the show and spend some time with us. I remember those episodes very fondly. There's a lot of great memories.
Our first two episodes. Those are our first two guests, first two episodes. And two of the top freshmen in the country, literally right now. So we've been in good company. Michaela Blakes has won Conference Freshman of the Week, I think, more than once. I know Keomi just got Big Ten Freshman of the Week. And Keomi just put out what people are calling the craziest basketball move that they think they've ever seen in a basketball game at any level. With that move she just put up against Wagner the other day. It's going all over the place, and for good reason. And we tried to warn people, Marcus. You know me. I try to help people out and put out the warning signals. I try to tell them that this stuff is coming, but we gonna keep doing the Lord's work. But yeah, shout out to the two queens, literally our first two guests on the show, our first 2 episodes from the show. Keomi and Michaela, really special.
And they're out here doing what they do best, putting the ball in the bottom of the hoop. Moving on from that, Unrivaled, as you guys know, we've been tracking Unrivaled since really the initial announcement. We've got 2 great things going on with Unrivaled. Number one, Cameron Brink of the Los Angeles Sparks. It was announced earlier today that she will be one of the wild card players for the Lunar Owls. Obviously, she's coming off of the ACL injury, so she won't actually be able to play until the 2026 season, but she is included in that group of the initial 36 that'll be a part of that ownership and equity and all that good stuff. So shout out to Cameron Brink for that. Also, as you can see on the other side of the screen, Unrivaled brought in a bunch of money and a bunch of investors. I think last time I checked, it was $35 million of investors from a litany of names. So we're talking Giannis, Juju Watkins, Don Staley, Michael Phelps and his wife, Joe Ingles, which shocked a lot of people I saw on Twitter, Rip Hamilton, and so many more. Just again, continuing to invest in Unrivaled, continuing to invest in women's basketball. And ironically enough, today is exactly 30 days away from the beginning of Unrivaled. Unrivaled tips off January 17th of 2025. So we're about a month away from the beginning of Unrivaled. I'm so excited. I can't wait for Unrivaled to start in January.
Going to be very interesting. Yeah, man. I mean, 3-on-3 basketball. It's going to be interesting to see them roll out this product and see how people respond to it. So did I hear you say Cam is not playing this season?
No, Cam's not playing this season because she's still rehabbing from the ACL. So she won't be.
I was hoping she was ready to go because that would have been a nice little tune-up before the season.
When I first saw it, I thought that she'd be eligible. I thought that she'd be playing this season as well, but it looks like they have her earmarked for 2026, but they wanted to include her in that initial that initial social media storm, that initial like players that were coming in. But she won't actually be able to suit up for the Owls until.
So she's on the, but like she's on.
She's on the team. Yes,
I didn't realize that's how it works. I mean, that's maybe she's an exception, but like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think she's just an exception because she's injured. I think it's just what's happening there. Yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure every other player that's been selected, they will actually be playing when it tips off in January.
No, I'm talking about like the idea of staying on a roster.
Oh,
like, would be like a redraft. Like I assume there would be different rosters, but if there, I haven't seen that side of it. Like if the rosters are set for next year, if they're teams or if they redraft or what.
I think in the beginning I had saw something that they're starting off with just 6 teams, and as time goes on, they'll add on more teams. So I'm assuming that the players that we have now, they're on these teams for now, and then as they add more teams, they'll open up more spots, and then more players will come in. So, but that is an interesting question because I'm actually not 100% sure on that. That's just kind of what I'm assuming from like what I remember, like very vaguely when they first started up. But yeah, very excited for Unrivaled. Very excited for Cam to get out there when she's able to get out there. It would have been a great tune-up though for her as she gets ready for the season. Who knows? Maybe they might
look at those rosters, man. We haven't. Have we? Have we? We haven't discussed.
We never dived into the rosters. We might need to dive into those rosters at some point.
Very interesting rosters.
Absolutely, very interesting rosters. My queen, A'ja Wilson. Shams broke the news earlier today. A'ja Wilson signed a 6-year contract extension with Nike. It is one of the richest shoe deals for a women's basketball player in history. Not only is she signing one of the richest shoe deals for a women's basketball player, she got a jet, brother.
But the plane messed me up with the logo on it.
With the logo on it and everything, man.
The logo, and not for nothing. I mean, the logo has. I think it's grown on people. I mean, I liked it from the beginning, but it's even continued to grow on me. The way it looks on that plane just hits different. Her chain, the chain logo is different. I think I saw her say on Twitter or something that that's a 1 of 1, like that. No one else is getting the chain, but the way that logo shows up on the plane, the chain, everything, it's lit. It looks lit.
Man, it's lit, man. And A'ja Wilson is lit as well. Another great thing, like another accolade, another achievement, another accomplishment for A'ja Wilson signing the 6-year contract extension with Nike. And if I remember correctly, her shoe is coming out next year at some point next year as well. Her signature shoe, her first shoe. So lots of big things. It's like every time you look up, A'ja Wilson's doing something else cool. She's doing something else new. She's getting some other distinction. She's just racking them up, man. She's just racking up the accolades. Yeah.
When you look at her on-court accolades, this is how she deserves to be treated. Yeah, so
absolutely, this is absolutely how we deserve it. Shout out Brandon Sleep. He said that plane was definitely a shot at the whole Caitlin got them jets discourse. Pretty funny. That's maybe
kind of funny.
I just think about the fact that there's so many people telling me that A'ja Wilson's not marketable, and I don't understand how a beautiful black woman who's talented in basketball isn't marketable. I don't understand.
Tell it.
I don't understand how she's not marketable, but
hey, math ain't mathin'. That
she got a logo on a jet, brother. I don't know many people that got their own logo on a jet. But hey, man,
come on now.
Shout out A'ja Wilson. Last thing real quick before we move on, and this isn't really something that usually falls into what's new, but it's something I saw this morning and I wanted to get your thoughts on it, Martin. So this is a tweet from Trendy Women's Hoop on Twitter. So shout out to them. They post a lot of cool things, a lot of interesting things, a lot of thought-provoking things. And it says the top WNBA players by position. It's got Sabrina at the 1, Kennedy Carter at the 2, Nafisa at the 3, Brianna Stewart at the 4, A'ja Wilson at the 5. Now, there's a couple things that stuck out to me instantly. The first thing is much love to Kennedy Carter. She had an incredible season this season in Chicago. From what I've been seeing on Twitter, she's been hooping over there in China. She's not the best shooting guard in the league. So let's just get that out the way there. First of all, that's either Arike or Jewel Lloyd. Me personally, I'd say it's Arike, but whatever your preference is, it's one of those two. Now, the part that really got me, this is the part that I want to get your thoughts on, because I know that you're big on the versatility of the league, especially as the talent has grown. Nafisa, Stewie, and A'ja. These are all 4s, brother. They all play the four. Like I know like, you know, Stewie, she's long. She might traditionally probably fit more in the three, but she plays the four right now in New York. Asia Wilson can play the five. Asia Wilson plays the five when Vegas goes small ball. Usually when we have Jackie Young, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, and Elisa Clark on the floor, we'll move Asia down to the five to play the center when we have small ball lineup out there. But other than that, Kia Stokes is the starting center in Vegas, and Asia is a four. Nafisa Collier is the interesting one because last I checked her height, Nafisa Collier is like my height. She's like 6'1", 6'2", somewhere around there. But she's also a four. So if this is the best WNBA players by position, the only player that's actually listed in their position right now is Sabrina. And that's a different conversation that we might get into a little bit. But what are your thoughts on this? Like when you look at this, what are you thinking? What are you thinking?
I mean, what I really think, because I agree with everything you're saying, I think that bottom row is really, I think that's the only thing you can do, even though we know that Asia isn't a traditional center. Mm-hmm. You can't put best player at now. If you're good, like you need those three players listed as the three best front court players in the league. They're the top three overall players in the league, period. Right. So I think the versatility kind of handicaps you a little bit here where, yeah, I mean, Stewie does play the four, so you can say power forward, but Asia is more of like, she's not a true center. She'd be more of a power forward realistically. But I think this is just where you get handicapped because there's so much versatility and you have the luxury of being able to put Fee as the best small forward. And maybe it becomes an interesting conversation, but hey, she can play some three. I think of Brianna in terms of skill set. I think of Stewie more as like a three, as like a wing player. I think she's got a little bit more of a guard component to her game. But to your point, Stewie plays the four in New York, plenty of minutes at the four. And we're in this small ball versatility era where Asia does play minutes at the five. So I think they're just handicapped. So I think it's interesting to talk about, but ultimately I think they did the right thing because you couldn't have done that without those three players being listed at wherever you slot them, you know, like that would be even more of an issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the other thing too for me is, and I said this, I kind of, you know, when we did our final top 10 of the season after the finals, this kind of shocked you a little bit. If we're going to go strictly by position, Jonquel Jones will be in that five spot because she's the best center in bats. She's the best true center in the league. Yeah. As I said on that episode, she's a top five player in the league. She's earned that.
That's what surprised me. We agreed that she's the best center in the league. I think she's earned that. What surprised me was you saying she's me putting her in the top five is the part that was surprising me. But if we're going to go by position, me personally, and we can get into the Sabrina part in just a second, but like again, I would have Arike Agunbowale in as the best shooting guard. Yeah, I would put best two in the league. She's a prototypical shooting guard.
Yeah,
Kennedy Carter, like you said, I think it's cool that she's earned herself. She's put herself in the conversation where people feel she could be the best shooting guard in the league. But I think Arike has earned that. Yeah, with just the time and stats that she's put in. Yeah. And even eye test wise, like I think Arike has earned that best two in the league.
And if you want to put Jewel Lloyd in that spot at the two, just because of the accolades and the championship and she's event, like I'd give you that. Like that's not like that's a 1A 1B thing for me. That's not really a big deal. I would put Jonquel at five spot. I'd put Asia at the four spot, and I would put Stewie because I think Stewie, at least for most of her career before she got to New York, was playing that three. I would put Stewie at the three. But like you said, you kind of can't have you can't have the best front court possible without the three best players in the league who all happen to be front court players. The part that's interesting though is, again, going back to that conversation we had after the finals when we were we kind of talked about what Sabrina Ionescu has proved, if anything, and a part of that discussion was whether or not Sabrina has played herself into being the best point guard in basketball. So obviously this tweet thinks so. Would you give that edge to Sabrina still? I know that you were kind of going back and forth between Sabrina and Caitlin. I know there's a lot of people. I'm one of them that would still say it's Chelsea Gray, but like, where are you at on the best point guard in the league right now?
So I think that Sabrina, having come fresh off a championship, playing the way she did this season, the way she was in the playoffs and in the finals, even though we talked about how she reverted for a few games in the postseason, she went back to the last year Sabrina, who looked like she was scared to drive the ball and do things off the dribble. Just a few games, she reverted back to that in the postseason. But for the most part, overall for the season, she was a completely different player. Her best overall season for sure so far in her career. And she looked great this year. So she proved enough, and then she won. Like she's fresh off a title. So on those merits, I think it's fine to make the argument that she's the top point guard in the league. Now, if you're asking me who I think is better, I told you before that I actually think that Sabrina's next challenge and hurdle is going to be to prove that she's better than Caitlin Clark, because to me right now, Caitlin's better. And I think even the numbers proved it this season. She scored more points. She had more assists, more rebounds, shot better. She did. I mean, eye test wise, just on who's better, I'm taking Caitlin over Sabrina. She moves better. She impacts the game in a different way, in my opinion. She might be a better shooter right now. They're kind of similar shooters. They can both hit deep threes, we know, but the way Caitlin can do it off the bounce, I take that over Sabrina. So, and I agree with you. I think a healthy Chelsea Gray still has a debate for best point guard in the league. But if you're asking me who the best player is at point guard, because that says top WNBA players by position.
Sure.
To me, by the end of the season, just eye test wise, Caitlin is there in that argument for me, and I can easily somewhat make the argument that she's better than Sabrina already right now.
That's a good point. Brandon Sleep said Caitlin would be the point guard, Kalia Copper would be the shooting guard, Nafisa the 3, Asia the 4, and John Cole Jones the 5.
If Mike Hughes isn't on, and we know he'd be commenting, he must not be here, because we know he'd be. Thank you, Brandon, for giving Ka some love, because Kalia Copper, geez, I knew there was someone I was forgetting, bro. I knew there was someone I was missing.
Yeah,
Kalia Copper's in that conversation. She would have something to say about the Arike, Jewel Lloyd. She's in that. She's in that.
She's a better defender than both of them. She certainly is in that. We love Arike, we love Jewel because they're both prolific scorers. They're two of the best scorers in the league. But Kalia Copper, she's a great scorer. She's efficient, but she's also a dog on the other side of the court as well. That's the thing that she has the edge over Arike and Jewel. So you're right. Yeah. Shout out. I mean, you're right. Kalia Copper deserves to be in that discussion for being the best shooting guard in the league, as well. But yeah, let us know what you guys think about this as we continue throughout the course of the show. We're going to hit the intro, and on the other side of the intro, we are going to show you guys a compilation of some of our Caitlin Clark takes before we get into some Caitlin Clark stuff.
Protect our queens.
This is what makes women's basketball so fire.
Okay, they say nobody watching. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people in there, Martin.
To see how far the game has grown has been amazing.
When recess came, I had my sneakers on.
I mean, I just love playing the game. It's fun.
I'm reacting on what the defender does.
I hit them with a hezzy. After that, they quit.
It's so crazy to think about, just real quick, how many great guests we've had on the show just this calendar year over the course of Protect Our Queens in general as well. But this year was a great year. We had a lot of great guests on the show, and you saw some of them in that in that intro clip there. We are going to talk about Caitlin Clark. We're going to dissect some of her quotes from her interview with Time after being named the Athlete of the Year for 2024. But before we do that, Martin did the due diligence of putting together a compilation of some of our most popular, I guess, most interesting takes regarding Caitlin Clark from this season. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. We all can't wait to see Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston play basketball together in Indiana. That's going to be amazing to see. But Caitlin Clark individually, to expect her to show up, and as some people have said, and we react to the comments, have the highest IQ in the league, or be the best player in the league, or be the best thing to ever happen to the WNBA on day one, it's unrealistic expectations. And what we're doing is not only are we setting Caitlin Clark up to fail by setting these super high expectations of her, we're also setting ourselves up as fans to be disappointed. Because if you go into something and you expect Caitlin Clark to be top 5, top 10, whatever, and then at the end of her rookie season, she's not, which it's possible, then we're going to be too quick to throw around that B word. We're going to be too quick to say she's a bust.
A lot of this, I do feel like, comes down to how her coach, we're assuming it's the Indiana coach, we're assuming it's the Fever organization, what kind of system they want to run with Caitlin Clark at point as their lead guard. Because I don't know what coach is going to be saying to her, we just want you to be a traditional point guard and just distribute the ball, run our offense. Like, we all know what she is. I will say, based on how the Fever are set up, I'm pretty sure they're going to need her. I'm sure they're going to encourage her to score close to 20 points a game. However many shots that looks like I'm not saying they're going to let her shoot 20 plus shots a game, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be encouraging her to score the ball.
And us saying, or Diana Taurasi saying that there's still a transitional period, that there's still going to be a bit of reality check, is not hate. It's just, no pun intended, the reality of the situation. You're in the big leagues now, playing ball with the big girls. It's not going to be you just pulling up from Poughkeepsie because you feel like it and getting bottoms. That's not what it's going to be, bro.
The defense that Caitlin Clark saw with Raven Johnson was just a taste of what she's about to see in the WNBA. Like, that's the closest thing to what, like, we saw Nika Mule, of course, in the Final Four game do a really good job as well. That defense from Raven Johnson is a taste of what Caitlin will see at the next level in the W. Quicker, not going for the little hezzies, right? Like, she's gonna have to figure that stuff out. It gets quicker, faster, stronger, just like any adjustment when you go up a level in sports. Like, you can't expect the people competing against her to be the main people singing her praises night in and night out and just like falling to their knees, kissing the ring, as Elle Duncan said.
What do you guys want these players to do? Just move out of the way when she has the ball in her hands? Send her a text every time they see her? Give her a big heart with a flower basket and a thank you card saying thank you for this and thank you for that? No. These girls get paid to win basketball games. And it doesn't matter if it's Caitlin Clark on the other team or not. If you are not on my team, if you are not playing with me in Chicago, playing with me in Vegas, playing with me in DC, wherever, if you're not on my team, then I'm not out here looking to be besties. I'm not out here looking to make sure that your best interest is at heart. That's not what this is. We're out here to win. We're out here to win basketball games. And so to all the people that want to sit up here every time something doesn't go Caitlin's way and act like they're bullying, act like they're being petty, act like they're being jealous, like, knock it off, bro.
I feel like we're giving her a little bit too much credit to imply that just by sending her over there, no matter how much she played, just by being on the bench, people have argued that just by being there on the bench, no matter how much she plays, that's going to draw people to watch more. That may be true. But if I take myself through that scenario and think about what that would look like, the word distraction keeps popping up in my head, because then the discourse, like, are people not paying attention to all this discourse and vitriol that's going on because of this girl? So if she's over there and she's not playing, the discourse is going to become, why isn't she starting? Why don't they play her more? Shouldn't they be like and that becomes a distraction from the team. So I don't know how you can't like see that. And again, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. And also, I don't think it's this like gigantic missed opportunity for the WNBA and for women's basketball right now. Like, I think they're going to have plenty momentum going over the next few years, that in 4 years, when they do send her, it's going to be way better. It'll be even better than right now.
There are 7 Olympic practices. Caitlin Clark has participated in 0 of them. The 12 players that are on the roster have participated in most of them. So this isn't, Caitlin Clark was not left off. Like, the idea that you are left off of something, that you had a realistic shot to make it, and for one reason or another, you didn't. Isaiah Thomas was left off of the dream team because Michael didn't want him there, right? That's being left off of something. Caitlin Clark was not left off. She didn't meet the requirements that all the other ladies that are on this roster met.
I met the criteria, but I wasn't.
Right.
Isaiah met the criteria.
Isaiah met the criteria. He wasn't selected. That doesn't apply to Caitlin Clark.
Maybe we should give Caitlin more credit because she is taking on more of the responsibility, more of the usage. She is a point guard. She has to be the scorer, the 3-point threat, the point guard. She has a lot of responsibility right away, and she's done a pretty good job with it. So I think you make a good point, because if Caitlin is going to keep doing what she's doing and she gets even a little bit better, it's most likely going to her, unless Angel goes to another level.
It is this notion, this idea that a white girl is going to come into a league that is predominantly Black, that is predominantly filled with members of the LGBTQIA plus community and quite literally humble them, because that's what her role as a white woman is. And I want to be perfectly clear. Black women in this country have and always will be, until something changes, the most underappreciated and unprotected community in this country. And this is just yet another example of that.
So I think what's really interesting is just seeing if people notice the timestamps on that. These conversations were all the way back to February when we reacted to Cheryl Swoops. Shout out to Cheryl Swoops, legend.
Via Cheryl.
And the comments that she made that people were trying to attack her for her reaction to Caitlyn and how she'd be in the WNBA. It was really just a timeline of tracking our thoughts. Like we talked about Caitlyn in the Final Four in March Madness earlier this year, all the way into projecting what she might be in the WNBA, what she might be in Indiana. We were at the draft in New York, the Rookie of the Year conversation, the Team USA Olympic stuff, all the narratives that have just followed Caitlyn Clark throughout the year. We had, there was so much to talk about. It's part of why she was named the Time Athlete of the Year, just in her rising popularity, the conversations and the discourse around her as a basketball player and just as a public figure, whether it be negative or positive or whatever. It's conversation, and it's been ongoing, and it's been, spicy and challenging for some people and whatever. So I will point out though and say, and I didn't do it deliberately because I happen to have the luxury of putting together our video packages and doing our content for us like that. So I watched that plenty of times, and someone could easily watch that and mistake you, Dwayne Marcus, for a Caitlyn Clark hater. Could very easily, I would hate for people to see that, for the average just viewer to watch that and think, man, this guy it seems like it's just the energy, I mean, if you listen to what you're saying,
right.
Listen to the message of what you're saying and stuff, like you're not going to hear just hate. Like
I love Caitlyn.
And just not to speak for you, because I'll let you go, but a lot of, I know your frustration and mine and stuff that we've had to combat on this show and on our platform is just the narratives and the discourse around Caitlyn and really going to the last clip. And I think some of the quotes we're going to show from Caitlyn's timepiece really resonate with some of the comments we made throughout the year and on this show. One of them having to do with like the racist backlash stuff, which she had a chance to speak about in the timepiece. But that last clip from you in that video, it's just the things that have, some of the things that have surrounded Caitlyn and the discourse, from using Caitlyn as a way to disrespect the WNBA, to disrespect Black women, Black players, these extremists, the Caitlyn Clark Coalition, as you've named them before. That's more of where the frustration came from. And, we're both fans of Caitlyn Clark. I had to correct you on a couple things because that Caitlyn would it be the number one option when it's team, and I had to say, whoa, hold on.
I took it there.
But again, even with that, that's just that's where it can be frustrating with players like this, where you're trying to give your honest opinion about what you think based on what you've seen, and if it's not some glowing praise report, then it's just automatically hating. So that's where the frustration has come from.
I'll take it. And right on cue, actually, as we're talking about this, Germ says, I'm not calling Dwayne Marcus a Caitlyn Clark hater. He just displaying the characteristics of a Caitlyn Clark hater. I love Caitlyn, right? I've said that countless times. Again, that's a fair assessment. That's a fair assessment. I love Caitlyn. I love Caitlyn. I think Caitlyn's a phenomenal player. I just think, again, like, when you're new to something, I think just, being new to something and then just overwhelmingly saying that this player that you've seen for the first time, that's got you watching this thing for the first time, like, that makes her the greatest at it ever, right? The first rapper I really listened to and really dived into listening to, and he's my favorite rapper still to this day, is J. Cole. By no means, though, do I think that J. Cole's the greatest rapper of all time. There are people who think that, and that's fine. But
that's true.
I don't
that
think
is true.
And
there are
and
people better than him So
yeah,
it
like,
wouldn't, I mean,
you know, and that's fine, right? Like there
Yeah.
are people who might have, you know, they might be new to basketball because of Wemby, right? But if those people are out here saying that Wemby's the GOAT when you know that he's not the GOAT, like that can become frustrating. And I think the thing for me, and I've said this on the show, I've said this off the show, I've said this in reels and comments and things, is there's a difference between viewership and informed viewership. And the only thing that I've ever been asking for over the course of this calendar year and really since the beginning of the whole Caitlin Clark phenomenon is just, if you're a new viewer, if you are a new consumer of the product, that's fine. Just be informed. Like, just be intentional about being informed. Don't like hear a couple tidbits of information and take it for truth and take it for gospel and just run with it without actually doing your research. That was my big beef with the whole Angel Reese rebounds from half her misses. Like, just watch the games, do the math, and you'll see that that's just not the case. But there are 3 quotes specifically that Caitlin Clark gave in the Time article that Martin and I, we wanted to kind of dive deeper into, we wanted to react to for a number of reasons. It's not just because they supported some of the things that we were, you know, kind of saying in that clip that people said we were crazy for. But this first clip is in response. Excuse me. This first clip is in response to Caitlin Clark being left off of Team USA. Right. In the paragraph before this, she did say that she felt that she deserved to be on the team. However, she did acknowledge that at the time, the Fever were 3-9, and she did kind of say that she didn't do herself any favors with the way that she was playing through those first 12 games of the season when the team was selected. So if we jump in with the quote here, Caitlin says, I don't want to be there because I'm somebody that can bring attention. I love that for the game of women's basketball, but at the same time, I want to be there because they think I'm good enough. I don't want to be some little person that is kind of dragged around for people to cheer about and only watch because I'm sitting on the bench. That whole narrative kind of upset me because that is not fair. It's disrespectful to the people that were on the team that had earned it and were really good. And it's also disrespectful to myself. That I think was kind of the first thing that Martin and I really tackled, right? And I know that you explicitly said it in that clip, is that like Caitlin Clark is a better basketball player and is deserving enough where if she's going to be on the team, it should be because of her talent and because she gives the team the best chance to win, and not just because people know if we just put her on the team, then a bunch of people are going to watch. And so I think that like that quote from Caitlin, you know, reaffirming and kind of just doubling down on what we were saying throughout that entire process, it was just eye-opening for me.
Yeah, it just turns out she wasn't interested in being pimped out for views. Now, was she good enough to be on that roster at that time? I do think she was. We can all agree she'd probably be better than a 40-year-old Taurasi right now, even though Taurasi was a special case. She was going to be on the team regardless of what anyone wanted or thought or said. So don't just make it a her versus Taurasi thing. But talent-wise, was she good enough to be on the roster? Probably. My biggest argument was that it's not even just the talent, because talent-wise, I think she was fine. She could have been good enough. I think they did give her a call. Like talent-wise, we know we even though they were 3-9, she was still good enough to be on the team. My argument was that it's better if it's more centered around her. Build the team around her. Don't just bring her because you know people are going to watch. Turns out she felt the same way. She doesn't want to go just because of her name. She wants to go because she said good enough, but like I'm pretty sure she felt she was good enough. I felt she was good enough. Anyone like she was good enough. It wasn't even about that. I think it was more about just the outside distractions that automatically come with Caitlin Clark, and USA Basketball and the people in charge were more concerned about like their team morale than trying to get some kind of money grab that's not even known or guaranteed just by having the girl walking around with the team and sitting on the bench and putting her in for garbage minutes. More people probably may have watched whatever. I mean, yeah, but it probably would have been more of a distraction and more negativity than anything else. So again, clearly she felt the same way I did in that, yeah, I don't want them just dragging me around like their shiny new marketing toy just because they know people are watching if I show up. She's not even interested in that. So I guess you people who thought that she should have been on the team and are pumping your chest out and have all these thoughts about Caitlin on the team, on Team USA, but you don't have any other thoughts about any other women's basketball players ever. You just want to talk about Caitlin for clout and for views. The girl herself said it. So why don't we just start taking things she says at face value?
Yeah, and that was something that in a reel that you had posted before the show last week, when we were getting into this, someone had commented, and I said that word for word. Like, why would we not take Caitlin Clark's word for face value on this situation. A big thing that happened on Twitter, Instagram, wherever, is a lot of people were saying, oh, Caitlin Clark just kind of said this for the PR. Caitlin Clark fumbled the bag. Caitlin Clark turned her back on fans. But it's like all that, like those people that feel that way, those are the people that you and I were talking about in that last episode that we did in October before I was out September before I was out for the week when I was on my cruise. Like, those are the fans that weren't really fans. Those are the people who I was referencing that were using Caitlin Clark as a way to kind of get in and kind of spew that hateful rhetoric, because at the end of the day, what good does it do Caitlin Clark, whether I like it or not, whether anyone else likes it or not, the most recognizable women's basketball player on the planet right now, what good does it do her in an interview with Time Magazine after being named the Athlete of the Year for 2024, right? What good does it do her to, in that interview, lie for whatever reason? Why wouldn't she use that as an opportunity to head on, truthfully address a lot of these narratives that we saw? A lot of these narratives that, and I'll be honest, I didn't believe her in the moment, but she even said that she wasn't even fully tapped in with because she was so focused on the season. She saw the stuff in passing. There was a couple things where she just kind of said flat out she didn't see it at all. I know a lot of people had issue with that, right? But like, if you think about it, in this interview, an opportunity to address a lot of the things that people wanting her to address, not being on Team USA, the stuff with Dejanay Carrington and a bunch of other, players across the league, right? The whole thing with Angel Reese. This was a great interview. It's a great read. If you haven't read it, I recommend you read it. They like anything that could have possibly come up with Caitlin Clark over the last, we'll say, 18 months that we want answers from, specifically from Caitlin Clark. She had the opportunity to answer them. Why wouldn't she answer these things truthfully? And so I look at that and I say, number one, we told you so. But number two, more importantly, why not take that at face value? And number three, if you're a Caitlin Clark fan, and I said this on Stuff About Sports at the same time, if you're a Caitlin Clark fan, why wouldn't you want Caitlin Clark to be on the team for her talent so that you can see her ball out on an Olympic stage? Why would you just be okay with her just being there for views? Because it'll mean more tickets are being sold and more people are watching. As Martin and I have said on the show time and time again throughout the course of this year, throughout the course of the show existing, if you're a fan of women's basketball, you're going to watch no matter who's playing, no matter what's going on. And I get it, right? Caitlin Clark has an appeal to people who aren't currently tapped in, who aren't frequently and fervently tapped in the way that Martin, myself, and others like us are. But still, if you're a fan, like if you're tapped in now because of Caitlin Clark, it shouldn't matter that Caitlin Clark's not on the team. That shouldn't dictate whether or not you're tapped in or not. So I appreciated that quote because, again, it just affirmed a lot of things that a lot of us had been saying all along.
Yeah, and just a quick thing, the double standard on the whole PR thing, because I think I saw more people talking about, oh, she said this for PR, and it's just a good thing to say in relation to the uplifting Black women and how they built the league. I saw more people saying that was like a PR thing as opposed to the team. Right. I mean, people said PR, whatever about the Team USA stuff. To that, I say this. It can't be both that she fumbled the bag by not being neutral and speaking up too much for Black women in the league and not being an arrogant little girl who just props herself up and not other people. She can't do that. And also it can't be both. She couldn't have fumbled the bag by doing that. And it's a PR move. That doesn't add up, people. That doesn't add up. So that's where people they get their stuff confused because it can't be both. A good PR move doesn't fumble the bag. So figure out what your narratives are, people. Get them together and try to make them add up because it's not making sense.
Not making sense at all. On to the next quote. And this kind of goes into that privilege and that, that reference of the Black players. She says, I want to say I've earned every single thing, but as a white person, there is privilege. A lot of those players in the league that have been really good have been Black players. This league has kind of been built on them. The more we can appreciate that, highlight that, talk about that, and then continue to have brands and companies invest in those players that have made this league incredible, I think it's very important. I have to continue to try to change that. The more we can elevate Black women, that's going to be a beautiful thing. I just want to say real quick, and this has been my big thing on this thing especially, and this also kind of ties into like the people who would always say no one watched the WNBA before Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark watched the WNBA before Caitlin Clark. So to all the people who, again, are saying that she's fumbling the bag for being neutral or uplifting Black women or saying that no one's watching the WNBA, do you not realize that if it weren't for the early trailblazers of this league, like the Cheryl Swoopses and the Tamika Catchings and the Lisa Leslies and all those greats from then, that Caitlin Clark would not be playing women's basketball right now. Like we do understand that. So again, going back to the frustration and the exhaustion that we kind of talked about earlier at the top of the segment, that was the thing for me. Like, again, it can't be both. You can't say nobody watched the WNBA before Caitlin Clark and then forget the fact that Caitlin Clark watched the WNBA before she became this big phenomenon. Like, if it weren't for all those legends, if it weren't for all those people who paved the way, if it weren't for Cheryl Swoops, like one of the people that Caitlin Clark was watching when she was a young girl growing up, wanted to be a basketball player. If it weren't for people like that, we wouldn't even be having these silly Caitlin Clark debates today. We wouldn't have Caitlin Clark, we wouldn't have Angel Reese, all these stars, wouldn't have a lot of these stars that we've all grown to love. And so, again, like, giving credit to Black players when the league is mostly Black, when most of the when you think about the legends of the game are Black, like giving credit to the legends, giving them their flowers while they're here. I don't understand why that's such an issue, but again, it just goes to show that these are the people that weren't actually here for Caitlin Clark or weren't actually here for the basketball.
Yeah, anyone who has a problem with her saying that stuff, they're the problem. They're the exact problems of these stupid fans that have tried to infiltrate the league that we've been combating. Like, that anyone who has a problem with anything about those statements, that those people are the exact problem. And yeah, I was about to slip in Maya Moore because it's known that her favorite player.
Her idol is Maya Moore. She freaked out when she met Maya Moore before one of the March Madness games. I mean, I don't understand. Yeah, people being surprised about this when her idol is Maya Moore is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, right. And these people who are surprised or concerned, even like that it's like people literally are out there. These crazy racist folks are, saying that, they're acting like the woke mob, got a hold of her, they got her to say this stuff, they got her to do this. They got her to, bro, read the room. Like, and by the way, they're going to hate those people. They're going to hate to see Paige Bueckers come in because all she ever does is talk about she was raised by a Black woman. And all she ever wants to do is advocate for Black women. So to your point, this was the exact time for Caitlin. If Caitlin had spoke up at any time during the season after a Tuesday night game against Atlanta or something and just randomly spoke up about like how much she loves Black women, it just would have been weird and off-timed. I love the fact that she waited for this moment on the biggest platform she's been on in terms of an interview or a feature to speak on these things. That lets me know that that's the opportunity. That's where like PR does come into play, but it's your opportunity to express exactly what you've been thinking, how you were feeling, etc. So some of it is a little bit of like media training, PR. You want to say certain things, but like that piece is about her. That's a chance for her to express anything that she truly and genuinely feels, and she never got a chance to say it in that way before. So that's how I took it, because on that platform, I'm going to take what she's saying at face value because now she's speaking on things that it feels like she never really got a chance to before.
Yeah, and the last thing that we'll touch on before we go on to our next segment,
this was in
reference, and this was my favorite one. So this is in reference. It's not it's in reference essentially to the Diana Taurasi clip from Scott Van Pelt when she essentially said reality is coming and everyone went nuts. Caitlin Clark, she says, professional players and professional coaches, this is no disrespect to college women's basketball, are a lot smarter. I love women's college basketball, but if you go back and you watch the way people guarded me in college, it's almost like concerning. They didn't double me. They didn't trap me. They weren't physical. And it's hard. It's college. A lot of those women will never go to play another basketball game in their life. They don't have the IQ of understanding how the game works. So I completely understand it. And it's no disrespect at all. They don't have the IQ. You have to simplify it for girls at that age. One of the very first things that Martin and I said when Diana Taurasi had that clip on Scott Van Pelt that went viral and everyone was going nuts is it's the truth. There's in any league from college to the pros, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the NBA, whether it's the MLB, whatever it is, there is a learning curve. And here we have it again in a moment that's just about Caitlin Clark to address some of these things. What did she say? Yes, there was a learning curve. And even if Caitlin Clark didn't say that, you want to know how we know there's a learning curve, Martin Flores? Because Caitlin Clark, after the All-Star break, after the Olympic break, was a completely different basketball player, was much more effective and much more efficient on the court than the player we saw before. the Olympic break. And we know that because the night before the Olympic break started, she set the record for the most assists in a single game in WNBA history. She had 19. And then she went an absolute heater down the stretch. So what this interview tells me is there's a lot of people, a lot of apologies. Diana Taurasi's owed an apology. Gino Oriyama's owed an apology. They slaughtered him as well for what he was saying. And some of the things that he was saying was kind of borderline, but there were some things he was saying in that interview with Dan Patrick that were truthful along the lines of, hey, like there is a learning curve. He kind of said those same things. There's a lot of things that people saw and immediately took as hate. And I'm glad that Caitlin Clark took the opportunity to essentially echo what a lot of us incumbent WNBA fans who've been here for a while have been saying from the moment all this stuff started. I'm glad that this happened, because now if you're choosing to live in this world, if you're choosing to live in this delusion that people are hating on Caitlin Clark, at least in these specific regards, then you're just choosing to be an idiot at this point. Like, I don't have a nicer way to say it. You're just choosing to be an idiot at this point.
Yeah, it sucks for people like me who really spend time like just trying to talk basketball, and if I just have a legit criticism of someone like Caitlin, it just becomes this whole thing where you can't criticize. But if it's about basketball, I have great basketball conversations with people who really know basketball about Caitlin Clark, about LeBron James, and we can speak candidly and honestly about what we're seeing and what we're not seeing. The whole point about it was the idea that she's not going to look the same as she did in college. That's all Diana said. You won't look superhuman. Guess what? In the first half of the season, those first 12 games, she didn't, that was all she was saying. That's all we said. It's not even a critique. It's just the reality of when you go to the next level, you don't happen to look the same. She didn't look superhuman in her first, in that first half of the season. First 12 games, she had like 3 or 4 games where she scored in single digits. She didn't score in single digits in one game her entire senior year of college. I think her junior year too. I was looking at it, but I was really looking at senior year stuff, but I'm pretty sure junior and senior year at Iowa, Caitlin Clark didn't have one game where she scored in single digits. She had several of them in her first dozen games in the WNBA. That's to be expected. That's not a knock on her. That's just that's all we were talking about. It's like, it's gonna look different. She's not gonna be pulling from Poughkeepsie, as my partner says. Eventually she found her range. And she got back to Poughkeepsie, even in those first dozen games, even in the first half of the season, we saw plenty of flashes. She had a 30 ball or two. Like, it's not like she wasn't good before the Olympic break. It's just that we saw times when she didn't look like she looked at Iowa. That's all we were trying to say, was that it may not look exactly the same. She barely even got as many shots off. She averaged 14 shots a game this season. Yeah. That even says something. Like, she shot over 20 shots a game at Iowa. 8 of her 14 attempts this season are from 3. So she only took 6 shots a game that weren't threes. You know what I mean? She only made 6 shots a game. She wasn't she wasn't fully, completely dominating the league. Like, she had dominant games, some dominant moments, but that's all we were ever trying to explain to people, is that she's not going to look exactly the same. She won't be superhuman. Reality is coming, and it's because we had a better feel for like what the league actually brings. She knew that too, and she understands it even better now. So now she can speak to it. I think they were watching a game with her in that piece, and she was like, she's watching a game like, I would score 50. Like, she's looking at it like, wow, now I see like the way what I just experienced this past year, my first year in the W. She's watching the college game like, oh my God, this is night and day. Like, she sees it and feels it for herself now. So sorry guys, we told you. It's all the proof is in, all the proof is here. We showed you what we've said. We showed you what she said. A lot of it just happens to line up.
we hate to say we told you so, but we told you so. Martin recently has also kind of been taking a bit of a victory lap on another player that we've been able to have on the show in 2024. Let's play a reel from a couple days ago of Martin stories on our page.
As of right now, Hannah Hidalgo should be the front runner for National Player of the Year. As of right now, Hannah Hidalgo should be the front runner for National Player of the Year. Not ACC Player of the Year, not First Team All-American, not the Dawn Staley Award, the National Player of the Year. Stay tapped in. I've made up my mind. The time has come. The time has come for this conversation. It's the appropriate time. And this is where we are now. Marcus, Notre Dame has just knocked off 3 top 10 teams in the last few weeks, starting with at USC a few weeks ago. Hannah had 24, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 steals. They got the win. Then they go number 4, Texas, overtime win. Hannah had 38, 4 assists, 3 steals. And then the game last week, the highest watched women's college basketball game so far this season. Over 900,000 people watched that Notre Dame versus UConn game. UConn ranked number 2 at the time. Hannah beats them for the second year in a row. This year at home, last year was at UConn. She had 29, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, and 3 steals. And she made 6 threes in that game. At this point, anyone who you might be thinking is the national player of the year, Hannah's either better than them, she's outplayed them, or she's literally beaten them head to head. I mean, the top people the conventional fan would think of for, like, if you just walk up to somebody who thinks they know women's basketball, or like, who's the national player of the year? They're just going to say Juju. They're going to say Paige. Those are the first 2 people, like, just regular fans are going to think of. And of course, they're probably in that conversation too. Hannah has beaten them both head to head, up front, and outplayed them. So I'll give you this. The UConn game was her second career game with at least 25 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists against a top 10 team. That's her second time having that stat line against a top 10 team. Her and Sabrina Ionescu are the only 2 players who have done that twice in the last 15 years. At this point, you've got people like Robin Lundberg saying that she's the closest thing to Caitlin Clark in terms of excitement. And you got Ryan Harris on CBS Sports making the case that she might be better than Caitlin Clark. So the excitement, because we all know what Hannah is now she's really earning best 2-way player in the country. Everyone loves what she does on defense. She's leading the country in steals again. She's just a force defensively. You see it. The energy that she brings, the passion, she's averaging over 25 points a game. And I've talked to you a little bit about, and on this show, for people who don't know, I've covered Hannah since she was in middle school. We're both from Jersey, had a chance to spend time with her during the pandemic. I did a feature on her on Basketball Society, and seeing her growth as a scorer through high school, her junior and senior year, she took it to another level. They lost some players transferred to other schools. They had a little bit more of a talented team her sophomore year. Some people left, and she really had to take on more of the scoring load with her dad as the coach. And she went right up to over 20 points a game. Like, a lot of it was just stealing the ball from girls and getting layups, but like she really grew in terms of shooting the ball, scoring the ball. I really watched her grow and evolve. Her freshman year last year at Notre Dame, without Olivia Miles, really needing to be that lead guard and having to score the ball, it's like she stepped right into that comfortably. And now this year with Liv there, it just feels like the game is even easier for her now with a point guard like Liv beside her. So, I mean, when you look at a player like that, like Hannah, where when you think scoring, the best scorers, a lot of people may not think of Hannah right away. You're thinking Juju, right? You're thinking of like, you're not necessarily thinking of Hannah, but once you think defense and energy, like that's when people start to mention Hannah. But guess what? A player who you may not be thinking as like the top scorer or best scorer, she's averaging over 25 a game. And we all agree she's the best 2-way player. Her team has knocked out 3 of the top 10 teams in the country. Now, as of this week's AP poll, I think Notre Dame is now ranked number 3. Mm-hmm. It's all there as of today. And I was looking at, I meant to jot down the rest of their schedule because I don't know if they have another game that's as big. I know they've got Duke. I know they've got NC State. So, and then, ACC games, obviously they've got conference games. And then we'll see what happens in the tournament. But regular season, I don't know if they have another big time, like top 10 matchup coming up. But the games that they've had early in the season, to win all 3 of their top 10 games, and Hannah outplayed everybody in those games. The conversation is legit now. She might be the best player in the country. She's probably the most exciting player in the country now.
I'm going to say this. Last week when we were on the show, we were talking about who the best team in the country might be. And I said UCLA is the best team in the country. And I rattled off all the reasons. The big reason, obviously, is that they were able to get the win over South Carolina. I know there's some questions about the front court still. I know that they're waiting for Maddie Westbeld to come back from injury, and that's a big part of it with Notre Dame. But with the way that Hannah Hidalgo is playing basketball right now, number one, she's not slowing down. There's no slowing down for Hannah, like literally or figuratively. I told Martin this. I've told him this maybe 15 times now this season, and it's December 17th. The season's a month and a half old. I don't think I've seen a faster player on the basketball court than I have Hannah Hidalgo watching her play basketball. Number one, I think with their wins and with the way that Hannah's played, I'd be shocked if Notre Dame's not a number one seed in the tournament when the brackets come out. Number two, more importantly, I wouldn't be shocked if they're a Final Four team. With that, like they're just playing that well. But like at the end of the day, this is Notre Dame. I think the only reason why Notre Dame's not ranked higher than South Carolina is because South Carolina's only loss is to the number one ranked team in the country, and the number one ranked team in the country is UCLA, and they're undefeated.
Yeah.
If you just take a look at their bodies of work alone, if you take a look at UCLA's body of work, I know they're undefeated and they have a win over South Carolina. If you take a look at South Carolina's body of work, right? They had the loss to UCLA, but then they bounced back and made TCU look like they weren't a top 10 team at all. And then you take a look at Notre Dame's body of work. There's a legitimate argument to be made that Notre Dame's the best team in the country. And a lot of that has to do with the way that Hannah Hidalgo has been playing basketball. I've been saying now for the last 2.5 weeks that Hannah Hidalgo is a psycho. And I mean it in the most respectful way I possibly can with the use of the word. She's a psycho, bro. I watched her seated take a basketball and throw it over her head half the court. In the 21 years of my life, I've never seen that before. I've never seen someone play on both sides of the ball with the intensity and the tenacity that she plays with. Like she's averaging, I think, 5 or 6 steals a game right now, but it could very well easily be 8 to 10. Because there's a handful. No, because seriously, there's a handful each game that like just ends up rolling out of bounds because they can't get to it fast enough. But like she's really that good, bro. And to your point about the scoring, because you mentioned this last week, that's a great point. Because I never even looked at Hannah and said, "Oh yeah, Hannah's a great scorer." I mean, obviously she's averaging 20 points per game. She hasn't had a game in her career so far where she's had less than 10 games or 10 points in a game. I talked about that last week. She only had 4 games in her career where she had less than 15 points in a game, right? So you don't think about her as a scorer, to your point, but Hannah is different. And if her competition for National Player of the Year are Juju and Paige, well, then the conversation just becomes, well, what does the head-to-head look like? And in both of those matchups, she had Juju lost in that game against USC. I don't think I've ever seen Juju look that lost. And then she had Paige looking uncomfortable as well. So I'm right there with you, brother. We might need to just etch her name on the trophy and give it to her now. Like something catastrophic would have to happen for her to not win National Player of the Year this year.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. Like I think this is part of it too, and it's why people are saying, like, mentioning how exciting she is, starting to even say she might be better than Caitlin Clark. Like this is why, because like people have done the Juju, like people are excited to see Juju kind of like surpass Caitlin in that way because people feel like she's a better scorer, maybe better overall player. But I think when you look at Hannah, and I think this is important, why people are mentioning the excitement and stuff. It's the way she plays the game. Like if you listen to any of her post game or interviews, she going to do 2 things. That girl going to praise the Lord, and she's going to talk about how much fun she has playing basketball, how much she just loves playing basketball. And I know you assume that everyone out there playing Division I basketball loves playing basketball, but when you watch Hannah Hidalgo, you see an example of someone who truly, just genuinely loves putting on socks and sneakers, going out onto that hardwood and playing the game of basketball in those lines. She loves everything about it. Truly. That's why she's screaming on and one. She's stomping. It's why you see her smiling a lot. Like that's part of when you think about the excitement and stuff. Like, yeah, Juju's game is a marvel. Her game itself her skill set is a marvel.
Yeah.
I feel like I never see Juju smile on the court. Do you? I feel like her face is stoic almost the whole time. I've seen her smile before, but like on the court, you don't see that like enthusiasm. Again, I'm not accusing Juju of not loving the game. She clearly loves the game of basketball, but like Hannah plays with a sense of enthusiasm that is infectious in anything, in basketball, in sports, in life. So like when you for someone to sit down and watch a game and they see that girl, by the way, she's only 5. The girl is 5'6", 5'7", averaging 6 rebounds a game, getting 10 rebounds in a game. Like, so it's this little old Hannah running out there, just killing people. So it just makes it even more impressive because people can't stop her. And like you said, she keeps going. Her motor, her energy, it doesn't stop, and it's not gonna stop. So it's like, bro, she keeps this up. I don't see how she's not National Player of the Year. She should have been ACC Player of the Year last year. You saw how pissed I was that they gave it to Liz Kitley. It should have ACC Player of the Year should have been hers last year. She's got that in the bag now. I don't even want to hear anything.
Yeah.
That should be solidified, and she'll get first team All-American and all that. We're at National Player of the Year. We're in the National Player of the Year phase at this point. That's where we've come to.
Last thing I'll say is if Hannah Hidalgo had an off switch, you wouldn't be able to locate it, and I don't think she would either. I don't think one exists. We do need to, however, talk about the other side of this matchup, and that was the Paige Bueckers component. But before we do that, let's toss it back to a clip from a couple months ago of Martin talking about the way that Paige plays the game.
Game looks so easy to her. I heard Rebecca Lobo say this, and I almost tend to forgot it myself. People forget Paige was the National Player of the Year her freshman year. I feel like Paige is reminding people how great she actually is, and it's like calm. Like Paige isn't Caitlin, where she's very demonstrative and shooting deep threes and stuff. Like she's very efficient, and that's the name of the game for UConn. They're efficient. Only player in the country who's averaging over 30. 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and at least 3 steals in the first 2 rounds of the tournament. She's the first UConn player in the last 25 seasons to have 5 straight games of 25 points or more. One of the most special things about Paige is that she hunts for shots in areas that most players don't look for shots for. Short corner, right? 10 to 15 feet, baseline jumpers. Most players don't look for shots in those areas, but she does. Caitlin's the gravity, the pace, but 3 and D, deep 3-point shooting, finding people, running, pushing. Paige, UConn, half court offense, pin downs, mid range.
Excellent basketball analysis from Martin Soares, as always. Before we dive in, I want to just throw this comment up from Joe Swithers. He said, Paige is still the best player in the country. She's just going through a tough spell. She does everything better than her, referring to Hannah. So the title card here is Paige Bueckers overrated? I don't want to speak for Martin Soares, but I personally don't think she's overrated. I tend to agree with you, Joe. I think that she's just in a bit of a tough spell right now. But there seems to be a little bit of discourse, especially after the game against Notre Dame and seeing how much she struggled. Do you think there's any validity to the claim or to the notion or to the idea that Paige is overrated?
No, I don't. I mean, I'm a Paige fan. I'm a Paige advocate. I believe in Paige. I think she's a game-changing player. I think her greatest skill is probably the best skill that you can have, which is your IQ. And her skill, I mean, skill-wise, she's got everything from shooting to dribbling to passing, even defensively, instincts. Like she's a beautiful basketball player. But I do think just the way she plays the game and understands the game is really her best attribute and what is going to make her such a great pro at the next level. I think why this question started to circulate more on social, especially after the Notre Dame game where Hannah clearly outplayed her. Like, I think it's a fine conversation to have about who you think is better. It's just the fact that Hannah has outplayed her 2 straight years at UConn last year. And just last week, in that game at Notre Dame. So I will say, though, when I watch Paige now, and I said to you before on here that I was hoping, her extensive injury history wouldn't affect her too much and that she could obviously continue to stay healthy and stay away from major injuries. But listen, she was the National Player of the Year her freshman year. She doesn't look as, I don't want to say as good. It's just that she doesn't have as much pop to her game. She has had several major surgeries in the last few years, meniscus tear, ACL. Like she's had several major surgeries. And when I watch her, having watched her for years now, she doesn't look the same necessarily. I think her lower body is just compromised sometimes. I don't see much power on her. I don't see much lift sometimes. I don't see much explosiveness sometimes. And I don't think she was ever like this, world-class athlete where she was super twitchy and stuff. That was never really her. I just feel like I've seen, especially when she goes up against like quicker, younger guards, stronger guards, I feel like I've seen her struggle a little bit. Like she's a master of getting to her spots and stuff. That's why I'm just like, she's going to be fine. She knows how to play the game. She knows how to operate no matter what her condition is. I just think, I think it's going to be interesting. Why? Because the Notre Dame game, but guess what? That wasn't, they just played Georgetown the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see her numbers?
I did not see her numbers. I'm scared to ask.
Well, she did fine. And she shot like 11 for 15 from the field, had 20, like she looked fine. So
sure.
Again, I think it's fair when you look at Paige against some of the other, players on her level now. And even in the Notre Dame game, she scored 20 points, but she was outplayed by the best player on the other team. Yeah. And so I think it's going to be interesting as we approach like Paige being the projected number 1 overall pick in the WNBA draft, which we all feel like is pretty valid at this point. But I do think there's a legit conversation of like Paige kind of still having to play her way into that. I think the tournament is going to be huge for Paige because it's probably her last go round. She could come back for another year, but I think she's ready to wrap up the UConn legacy and get on to the pros. And as a result, I think she's gonna put everything that she can into the tournament, and I'm sure she'll be great. But the last thing I'll say is in that Notre Dame game, Paige was not even the best player on her own team. Sarah Strong is becoming the story at UConn. I don't know if you watched that game. Sarah Strong does whatever she wants, bro. And I heard them say on the broadcast that Gino is telling her that like they apparently are trying to explain to Sarah Strong how good she is. Like they're trying to introduce to her how good she actually is, because bro, it felt like every possession I saw Sarah Strong doing something, it was effortless. It was strong. It was smooth, off the bounce, driving the ball, passing the ball, shooting the ball. She was their biggest matchup advantage against Notre Dame, and at times looked like just their best player. So that's something I'm going to be watching for this year too, as it relates to UConn and even Paige, because Sarah Strong is looking like a different level of special, which is fine. Like I like what I mean, you need other great players alongside you. Mm-hmm. But man, that was one of my big takeaways from UConn in that game. And it, again, made me think about, I saw all the discourse on Twitter and stuff around Paige, and I'm like, well, I think it's based on what we just saw. And I don't think she's having like a rough spot. I think she's playing fine. I just think she's not dominant like people who hear the name Paige Bueckers and how popular it is and how big of a figure she is. I don't think her dominance is matching, or on the floor is matching up with her popularity at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you look at her numbers right now, she's still averaging 20 points per game. She was averaging 22 last season. She's shooting 57% from the field, almost 58, which is a career high for her right now. So like, and she's taking, she's taking 2 less shots and hitting the same amount of shots she was hitting last year, which is why that percentage has gone up about 5 percentage points. But I agree with you. I'm not concerned about Paige because I know what Paige looks like at her best. And what Paige looks like at her best is the best guard in the country, arguably, right? I do agree with you, though. The tournament's going to be big for Paige for a number of reasons. I think the first reason why it's going to be big for her is it's going to be the momentum that she's going to kind of need to feed off of in that transition, because we know how quick that transition is. If UConn is as good as we expect them to be and makes the run that we expect them to make, which is to be an Elite 8 team at the worst, then if that's it for her, she's going to have a week and a half, 2 weeks before her name is called at the draft on April 14th or 15th, right? So, like, she's going to need to have a great tournament. But more importantly than that, I think it's going to be good for her confidence, I think, to kind of feed off of a great tournament. I think she will have a great tournament. I think Paige is fine. I don't think Paige is overrated. However, and this is something that I've kind of picked up on just a little bit, I think one of the side effects of the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, and one of the side effects of Caitlin Clark being as great as she was her junior year, being great as she was her senior year, then being the number 1 overall pick, is now, from a fan's perspective, the bar in which guards are going to be graded, specifically guards with first overall pick potential are going to be graded, has now shot up because of the hype surrounding Caitlin Clark, right? Now, to the people who, again, have been here for a while, we know, as you mentioned, we know that Paige is deserving of that number one overall pick because she's just that talented. And teams across the league know that as well. But I think in the court of public opinion, which is where this overrated, underrated, properly rated stuff comes from, Paige is going to have a great tournament for a lot of this to die down. If not, a lot of people who are kind of still kind of getting tapped in and really starting to get accustomed to Paige and how she is, they're going to take this season at face value and think maybe there is a bit to be a little bit more concerned about. And so I think we're starting to see a little bit of the side effects of that's why Hannah, like you mentioned, the guy from CBS Sports, we're talking about Hannah. It's not just Hannah being the best player in the country, or Hannah being the best guard in the country. It's Hannah might be better than Caitlin Clark, right? Like that's the new bar now. Like the new bar for guards is Caitlin Clark. And I think now that's what everyone's doing is they're comparing what we saw from Caitlin at this time last season to what we're seeing from Paige right now. And if you're comparing the two right now, Caitlin, I think you would say was better at this point her senior year than Paige's, but there's a long season left and Paige is still talented. Like we still know that Paige can still go out there and get hers. And I think she will. There's just a little bit of adjusting that needs to happen as well, but she's having fun. Statistically, she's having a pretty consistent year. The shooting is up. The points are right around where she usually is. Same for rebounds and assists and things. She's having an okay year, but to your point, and that's not something I considered, when she's playing against quicker, twitchier, faster guards, that tends to be where things kind of tilt into that other player's favor. And so if she's going to have a lot more of those matchups, that I think is when we need to start paying a little bit more attention to see if Paige has learned from this now another year in a row now where she's being outplayed by Hannah, but then more importantly, just being able to build off of that to continue to keep her draft stock at number one overall. Because what you don't want to do if you're Paige, even though we know that you deserve it, is give anyone a reason in the WNBA to think that they shouldn't take you number one overall.
Yeah, I mean, pro scouts, I'm sure are going to have their eyes on that stuff, especially come tournament time. And last thing I'll say, like it's back to the excitement thing. Mm-hmm. That's why people are comparing to Caitlin, because Caitlin has created more excitement from fans and non-fans than ever because she makes it exciting to watch. That's why the word excitement came up with this guy Ryan Harris from college basketball from CBS. Mm-hmm. Saying the excitement, like he said she might be better. Robin Lundberg was the one said Hannah might be the closest thing to Caitlin Clark in terms of excitement. Robin Lundberg is fully aware of who Paige Bueckers is. Paige's game is not that exciting right now. And that's part of what I was saying is that, see, a lot of people, including us, have tried to remind people that Paige was Paige before Caitlin was Caitlin. And Paige Bueckers is extremely popular. And like I said before, I think a lot of people are just waiting to see her popularity match up with what they see on the floor. If a casual fan watches Paige, they're going to see a very good player. They're going to be impressed. If they watch Paige freshman year, they're going to be like, yo, this is the best girl I've ever seen. And I think it's not just the Caitlin effect. It's the effect of the boom of talent that's happening. Sure. Because Paige doesn't just look like an outlier now. You see Flaugier, you see Zamaria Jones, you see Sanaya Rivers, you see Hannah Hidalgo, you see Juju. I mean, it's exploded now. So like now, just 3 years ago, I think Paige looked more like an outlier than she does now. But she's still one of the more popular names, one of the best players. But you're seeing a girl like Hannah kick up on her and you're like, well, maybe she's the best player in the country. So that's where I think, again, these conversations are somewhat warranted. And I look forward to seeing Paige take things to another level. The whole thing with quick guards who are smaller than you, closer to the ground, that's where I'm saying her lower body is tested, because that's where quickness, planting, power kind of comes into play. And you got to be way more precise and, with quickness. And I think, she has quickness to her, but that's where I've seen her be at a disadvantage. Sometimes it feels like where she just doesn't have like all the mobility and wiggle to do things at a level where she can just be like unlimited at times. Like she's so efficient. She's going to get to spots. She's going to be able to hit big shots. You run her off screens. You can use her in different ways. She can be a point guard. She can run your offense. Like, beautiful basketball player. But we talk about like that level of excitement to the Caitlin level or even to the Hannah level. I just think that's more of what is reasonably being questioned right now, is like, how exciting is Paige Bueckers really? Or is she just a great basketball player, which is also fine?
Yeah. What is also totally fine. Before we go, there's one more thing we got to talk about. Last week, Martin wanted us to talk about Maddie Booker. This week, I've got a player that we need to talk about. Before we do that, let's toss it to another clip.
Shame on us for not once on this show talking about Audi Crooks and Iowa State. This chick is dominant, a dominant post player. Obviously, she has the size, but she has touch. She shoots one-footed, off-foot, like shimmy fadeaways. Like she reminds me of my guy Los I played with in college. She is footwork, timing, touch, feel. Iowa State in that region, we better look out for her because, again, when that game slows down, you have an elite post player like that. Better watch out for Audi Crooks, yo. She's the real deal. Ooh, that girl can play.
That girl can play. A couple weeks ago, I said on the show, we were kind of talking about just players that we're excited for this season. I said it's important that we do not make the same mistake this year that we made last year, which is waiting until March to talk about Audi Crooks. And I'm saying it again on the final show of Protect Our Queens of 2024. We need to not make this mistake again. Martin Sories, first of all, Audi Crooks, she's averaging 22 points, 8 boards, 2 assists. She's shooting 60% from the field so far this season, which is great. But here's the thing that is even crazier to me. Audi Crooks has 3 30-point games so far this season. She scored 33 points in a win against Drake. She had 31 and 10 in a loss to Iowa last week, and she had 30 points against EIU on Sunday. Martin, in each of these 30-point games, she's shot at least 60% from the field. 60% against Drake, 64% against EIU, 64% against Iowa, 75% against EIU. Audi Crooks is a certified baller. We've talked a lot about last year's freshman class. We've talked about Juju. We've talked about Malaysia Fulwiley, right? We've talked about Maddie Booker last week. Audi Crooks, Hannah Hidalgo, obviously. Audi Crooks is another one of these really talented cornerstone pieces of a program that's super talented, and we have to make sure that we're keeping tabs on her because, as you know, as this senior class goes away, right? Once Paige and Olivia and Kiki and all of them, once they make it to the league, right? Then we're waiting on Flaugier and the crew to go. When it's time for us to really sit down and when we start looking at and we start comparing this freshman class to other freshman classes, I know you kind of tapped in, you kind of touched on this a little bit last week, but we think about that class from 2020. We're talking about Paige, you're talking about Caitlin, you're talking about Angel Reese, you're talking about Cameron Brink, you're talking about all of those players who have been great for the game of women's basketball. This freshman class from last season, Hannah Hidalgo, Malaysia Fulwiley, all of them, Audi Crooks is another one. And she's not, and I think what's happening is she's not playing at one of those big time schools that you think about when you think about women's basketball, right? When you think about college women's basketball, you're thinking about your Tennessee, you're thinking about South Carolina, you're thinking about UConn, obviously, you're thinking about UCLA more recently, but to a lesser degree, right? You're thinking about those big, you're not thinking about the Iowa State Cyclones. But, and I'm going to say this because we've kind of been putting, I feel like right now, everything is all about putting things in the context of Caitlin Clark, right? I know there were great players for Iowa before Caitlin Clark, but Caitlin Clark kind of stamped Iowa over these past couple seasons. I think Audi Crooks, if she stays at Iowa State, is going to stamp Iowa State as another one of those programs that's kind of like middle of the pack, but can make a run if everything's going well. And as long as Audi Crooks is playing the way that she is playing, I mean, we watched her go toe-to-toe with Cameron Brink and Kiki Iriafen in the tournament last season. Iowa State beat Stanford in that game. It was a back and forth game. It was a barn burner down to the wire. Cameron Brink fouled out, right? Like, that was a great game. And when you look back at that game, Audi Crooks was holding her own. And that was the game that I think really should have cemented that conversation and made her a household name, right? You talk about last week how, unfortunately, again, because of the Caitlin Angel thing, it seems like a lot of these players only get their recognition either by really great performances and really big moments or by a little bit of controversy. Audi Crooks has had her great performance in a big moment. She went toe-to-toe with the best center in the nation from last season in Cameron Brink, and a player that we recognize right now as the best post player of the country, a player that was so good last season that you shamed me on this show. You shamed me because we didn't talk about Kiki Iriafen at all last season, and she was being compared to Asia Wilson with the way that she plays ball. Audi Crooks held her own against both of those players, and she's picking up right where she left off this season. There's a lot of people on Twitter and elsewhere that are kind of holding a couple of these losses against their Iowa State. The team itself is not that great. Like it's a middle of the pack basketball team that'll make the tournament. They'll be, you know, in one of those middle teams, but they are, as we talked about last year, they're going to be a bracket buster because of Audi Crooks. So we have to make sure that we are keeping tabs on and staying tapped in with Audi Crooks because she's just that good. And she's another one of those players in this sophomore class, in this class of, 2023, that's going to continue to take the mantle and continue to run with it and continue to help elevate the game of women's basketball over the next couple of years. So Audi Crooks, I mean, dude, 3 30-point games, at least 60% shooting in each of them. We got to be talking about that more. That's nuts to me to even think about, to even fathom. So we got to talk more about Audi Crooks moving forward for sure.
You're right. Yep. As a big, she's one of our special, unique bigs out here. So super talented, so coordinating, so coordinated, a great feel for like the floor, the basket, like anyone who enjoys like a good post player, like watching great post play, Audi Crooks just has it, man. And that clip was from last season. She's doing, you know, pivots, turn around off one foot. Like she's got shooting touch, great feel, like just another really, really great basketball player. She's really good.
Watching Audi Crooks play basketball on free television feels like a crime against humanity. She's just that good at the game of basketball. That does it for the final episode of the Protect Our Queens podcast of 2024. Super quickly before we go, we did this for the final episode of the year last year. There was a much smaller sample size, though, because we started in September. Martin, what was your favorite moment from Protect Our Queens this year? I know we didn't put a clip together like we did last year, but if you had to pull one moment from this year that was your absolute favorite, what would that moment be?
Man. Man, I guess I'll say I think our 1-year anniversary show just overall was a dope moment, having Lakeisha come through, having Queena do the special segment for us, having Janine come through. That felt like a legit party. So that's the first one that comes to mind for me.
Favorite moment for me, it wasn't on the show, but having the opportunity to go to Brooklyn, talk to fans outside of the draft venue, put that together, post that on the page, and just be in the building for Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso and all those talented players being drafted. That was a great draft. The atmosphere inside that building was nuts, bro. I will never forget that for as long as I live. That was certainly my favorite moment from the year. 2024 was a great year for Protect Our Queens. 2025, not to just be corny or cliche, but 2025 will be better. It will be so much better for us. So for my guy, Martin Soares of Basketball Society, this is Marcus of the Protect Our Queens podcast signing off. Thank you guys for watching. You guys have a happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, however you celebrate. Happy holidays and a happy new year. We will see you guys in 2025. But as always, you enjoy yourselves some women's basketball.